And then I say, right. And Joe says, so, yeah, but, oh my gosh, you know, when I look back on those times, I just met so many people. I mean, sometimes I would meet somebody in, like, say, the middle of the country, like Kansas, right? Country meaning America. He'd meet someone in the middle of America. Kansas is a state in the middle of America. And then I said, uh-huh. And Joe says, and then like a year or two later, I'd be, say, in Seattle. Seattle is a city in the northwestern state called Washington. And Joe goes on to say, and I'd run into the same people, the same person. Run into. This means to unexpectedly see someone. Run into. For example, when I visit my parents, I usually run into my uncle because he lives in the same town. Run into. And then I say, oh my God, it's such a small world, huh? It's such a small world, or it's a very small world. It's a small world. This means when you are surprised to see another person you know at a place that you did not expect to see them. It's a small world. For example, one time Joe was in New York and he saw his cousin on the train. Then he said to her, wow, it's a small world. And Joe says, yeah, I know. But that was another great thing. Like, I met so many people and became such good friends with so many of those people. Some of these people are like my closest friends to this day, like Tim, you know? And then I say, yeah. And Joe says, so it was really something that, or really amazing that it was like a community, you know? Community here means a group of people living and traveling together. And then I say, I was going to say, too, it sounds like it was a very bonding experience. Too, meaning also. So I was going to say also. Bonding experience. This is something that makes people become closer. Bonding experience. For example, when my mom used to read stories to me when I was a child, it was a bonding experience. Bonding experience. And Joe says, oh yeah, totally. Like, it's funny, if you're a deadhead and you meet another deadhead, a deadhead, this is a fan of the music band The Grateful Dead, or it's someone who likes the music band The Grateful Dead. An example of deadhead is Joe's favorite band is The Grateful Dead. He is a deadhead. Deadhead. And Joe goes on to say, it's like, there's just like almost hidden language that you speak. What Joe's talking about with hidden language is an unspoken language, or language that is not spoken because there is an understanding between deadheads. And then I just laugh. And then Joe says, you know, it's crazy, or he's saying it's unbelievable. Joe goes on to say, and you know, the fans were such rabid fans. So what he's saying is they were very rabid fans. Rabid fans, these are people who really like something. So they are rabid fans of whatever they like. For example, my friend Tom is a rabid football fan. He really likes football. Rabid fans, or in this example, rabid fan. And Joe says, I mean, you know, a lot of deadheads, the only music they would listen to was the music of the Grateful Dead. And then I say, wow, I could see why people would think that that was a bit cultish. What I'm saying is that that was like a cult. Joe says, yeah, totally. And then I say, well, do you think that Tim will actually follow through with writing this book? Follow through, or follow through with something. This means to do something. Follow through with something. For example, I do not think that Greg will follow through on building a house. He is too busy. Follow through. And Joe says, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Your guess is as good as mine. This means I do not know. For example, I asked my mother what time my father would be home, and she said, your guess is as good as mine. He comes home at a different time every night. Your guess is as good as mine. And then Joe goes on to say, you know, he can be a flake sometimes. A flake, this is someone who says they will do something, but then they decide not to do it. A flake. For example, Lindsay is a flake. She told me she would go to France with me, but then she canceled the trip. A flake. And then I end the conversation by saying, yeah, I know. All right. I would just like to point out that in this conversation and in the other conversations, you're going to hear many words that have been shortened. Some examples from this conversation are might have. Might have is short for might have. An example of might have or might have. I thought he might have called. Another word that was shortened in this conversation is which is short for them. For example, I followed him everywhere. Another word that's been shortened is you know. You know is short for you know. For example, you know, they're my favorite band. And then drivin'. Drivin' is short for driving. For example, you would see the same cars driving. You're also going to hear and a lot. These are just pauses or breaks in a conversation. People sometimes say these when they're trying to think of more to say. They are filler or they don't really have any meaning. You will also hear some slang like yeah. Yeah is casual or informal for yes. There are also many other words that you will hear a lot of which are just filler or really have no meaning. So they are not needed in the conversation. Some examples in this conversation are hey, well, and, oh, like, but, I mean, so, actually, you know, say, such. There are also words that are said when I'm agreeing with Joe or he's agreeing with me. Some of these are right, mm-hmm, uh-huh, yeah. There are also words that are said to show the emotion, I don't believe it. For example, or some examples of these from this conversation are, geez, oh man, oh my gosh, oh my God, wow. All right, this concludes